I'm getting tripping up with myself in my excitement. Calm down, Charlotte. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're looking very festive. We've got a very festive setup today. I've got my reindeer headband on. Let's change it up a bit. We've got no natural light that we need to worry about, so why don't we try something a bit different? So I thought I would sit down on the floor next to the tree, and yeah, today's video is going to be the books that I read throughout November. I'm sorry that this is a bit late coming to you. If you've never been to this channel, if you've never fallen across one of my videos before, my name's Charlotte. I'm a writer, I'm a historian, a heritage researcher, and I produce videos for my YouTube channel on day in the life of a writer, what it's like to be a writer, how I became a writer, and we also do lots of book reviews and literature-based content and stuff like that. So if you like that kind of thing, then I hope that you enjoy my channel. My channel is called Charlotte and Tom, and that's because every once in a while me and my husband produce a video together, either when we're travelling or we've actually been renovating our house, so there were a lot of house renovation videos in the earlier part of this year. So there's a little bit of everything really. If you're new here, you are very welcome. Today, like I say, we're going to be looking at the books that I read in November. This is part of a series. I think it's about the fourth or fifth one now. So this book is one that has been on my bookshelf for about a year, and I've been wanting to read it, and for one reason or another just didn't. And then when I started my kind of these new series of videos, and I started my new commitment to reading one book, at least one book every month, either by a person of colour or about a culture or a group of people from around the world, like world literature, I picked this back up and I was like, I definitely need to make sure I read this as soon as possible. And it is The Colour Purple by Alice Walker. I'll show you the book because the cover for this edition is just absolutely beautiful. I really love it. It's just so beautiful. It's so simple, but it's really effective. I am sure that everyone will know this book. It is a very, very well-known book. It was a winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and the back of it says, set in the deep American South between the wars. That's the First World War and Second World War, by the way. Celie, a young black girl, was born into poverty and segregation, raped repeatedly by the man she calls father. She has 2 children taken away from her, and she's separated from her beloved sister Nettie before being trapped into an ugly marriage. But then she meets the glamorous Shug Avery, singer and magic maker, a woman who has taken charge of her own destiny. Gradually, Celie discovers the power and joy of her own spirit, freeing herself from her past and reuniting her with those she loves. So that's the storyline. So I knew that I was going to be dealing with topics of learning more about racial segregation in the 20s in America, and generally just learning about that period in history and treatment of black people and black lives and that kind of thing. So Alice Walker is an absolutely phenomenal writer. I absolutely loved the way that it was written. It was just... there were just sentences or just words or just descriptions that said like, described an entire scene or entire place in like a single line. I hope you understand what I mean by that. Like, I feel like some books are like really, really overly descriptive of place and time and people, and you kind of get a bit bored with the description. Oh god, they're describing something again and again. Alice Walker doesn't do that. She kind of almost turns that on its head. There's very little description, but what she does write is crafted so beautifully. The language is crafted so beautifully that it says exactly what it needs to say, and actually sometimes by not saying something you still know what she's trying to tell you, if you know what I mean. Which also means that she has the power to absolutely destroy you with like a single line. So there'll be some things that she'll read and I'll just be like... I was like, there were times when I'd be reading something, I had to kind of put the book down and I just had to think. I just had to sit there and let that kind of sink in what she'd just said. I can't find the example now. Basically, there's an example where Celia receives a telegram, and I won't tell you what the telegram's about because I don't really want to spoil the book too much. And it's really devastating news, but it's kind of like explained in a single line, and you read it, and I was like, does that mean what I think it means? So I had to read it again. I was like, oh my god, it does. And it was almost like it was so so simply written the first time that I almost missed. I mean, I didn't miss it, but I almost was like, God, I could have missed that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like having to go back and reread it. So she has this way with language that, like I say, she can explain something very quickly, but it still has a really deep, lasting impression on what you say. The chapters are letters, so it's written in the form of letters, and at the beginning Celia is writing to God, and I think she's writing to God in a way of almost like pleading with him, like confessing what's going on, because it starts off and she's being raped by her stepfather. Yeah, she's just obviously having a horrific childhood, and so she writes these letters to God almost like a confessional of, can you help me, this is what's going on. And then as time goes on, she starts to write to her sister, and things slightly shift, and as she becomes more independent and more self-confident and all that kind of stuff, her reliance on having to write to God changes. Hey guys, just popping in here on the edit to basically say that I also wanted to add the fact that Celia decides to stop writing to God because she kind of feels like he's not listening to her. There's a point in the book where she says that she feels like God wouldn't listen to a poor black woman. And so she chooses to start to write to her sister Celia because she feels like Celia might at some point actually read the letters and actually take notice in a way that God never had before. So I just wanted to note that as well, because that's quite an important pivotal moment when Celia starts to think that way. So yeah, just wanted to add that in as well. And I think that was a really beautiful creative choice to make in writing this kind of book, and that again, it had that kind of speech about, even though she's supposed to be writing a letter, it still felt more speech-like than crafted narrative, if you know what I mean. And another thing about the actual kind of craft of it is that right at the beginning, Celia's letters are very short. They're like a single page or 2 pages. The dialect, her kind of speaking dialect, is very heavy in the way that Walker's written the first few letters, and then as she grows older, because it does span quite a long period, does the book, I can't think how many years, 20, 30 years, something like that, so it's a long period that the book spans, and the letters become longer, and her language, she learns more language because she's mixing with different people, and I think she goes with someone to another city, and in that city they teach her how to drop some of the kind of really heavy dialect that she had from her hometown, and I thought that was quite nice. It kind of showed the maturity of her from a young girl, a child in effect, up to being like a really mature adult, but it was also like a kind of a narrative way of showing that development of her character through the language that you were reading in the book. So I really loved that. I thought that was a really interesting kind of decision. And I think it made it feel more real. It made it feel more like, at the beginning of the book, yes, you could tell you were talking to someone who was a child or very young, very innocent, who were being taken advantage of, who maybe I mean, she was obviously educated, was Celia, because she could read, but I don't think she was, she hadn't been, you know, given a broad range of books. She didn't know a lot of different topics. There's a point when her sister knows more about world geography and stuff than Celia, and Celia learns it from her sister. So when she's young, she's very kind of isolated and kind of only knows her immediate world. She doesn't really know of the world around her, but then as she grows and she develops, she learns more of that stuff, and that makes its way into her letters, and it's just beautiful. It's just really, really beautiful. So there's a part in the book where one of Celia's, I think it's her stepson's girlfriend, ends up being put into prison, and basically they had a car and they were driving through town and pulled up in the car, and the mayor was walking past with his wife. The mayor's wife was asking Sophia to come and be their maid, and Sophia was like, hell no, I don't want to be your maid. And the mayor's wife was like, what do you mean? Why don't you want to? Because of course, if a white person wanted someone to be their maid, what do you mean they wouldn't want to? It's just a classic. It was a classic example of 20s racism in America of, if I want this black person to be my maid, she will do it. And not even thinking that it's an offer, that she can turn it down, just that she will want to do it. She will have to do it because I am superior to her. And it was one of those classic, it was that classic example of what was happening. And so Sophia said no, and the mayor was like, the mayor of the town slapped Sophia because she had said no. She just said no. I mean, she said hell no, and to all attempts, you know, was very kind of like, no, get lost, I don't want to do that. But that's her right to talk like that, and the mayor slapped her. Now, Sophia's character in the book is quite sassy. She's quite a confident woman. She's not, you know, she certainly wouldn't have gone, oh, no, thank you, but that's very kind. And when he slapped her, just be quiet. He slapped her and she slapped him back, which, go for it. She was put in prison for slapping the mayor, even though nothing happened to the mayor after he slapped her. She was put into prison, and she was put into prison for something like 12 years. And basically she started off in prison, and then she ended up being the maid to the prison warden's family or something like that. But she was still imprisoned. She was imprisoned at this person's house as the maid, but she was still in prison. You know, she wasn't free. She didn't have a liberty. Yeah, so and I was like, that was one of those instances where I was like, yeah, I bet that happened. That's definitely, how many times has that happened? So I quite liked, well, I say liked it. I don't think you can like something that's pretty horrific like that, but it was a part of the book that stayed with me that I thought about a lot. So yeah, that's The Colour Purple. I absolutely loved it. I'm going to give this 5 out of 5. Absolutely nothing I would have changed about it. I read through it in about 3 days, actually. It was that good. It was a really quick read for me. So yeah, like I say, I'm giving it 5 out of 5. Absolutely fantastic. If you haven't already, then definitely read it. It's an important book to read for your own self-education about Black lives in America. I haven't watched the film yet. I'm going to watch the film at some point over Christmas. I started watching it and then was busy with work and stuff, and I thought, no, this isn't a book I want to be just on in the background. It's a book I want to think, I want to concentrate on, I want to look at. I haven't really had time to talk about Celia's sister and her story, because her sister has a really, really interesting story about colonialism and religious colonialism in Africa, in African countries. That idea of sending missionaries to African countries to spread Christianity. That is a topic and an idea that I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on. So there's some of that comes into the book as well, and I went and I kind of dived a bit more into learning more about that. So the Poisonwood Bible, which is actually on my to be read shelf at the moment, is it's about a missionary family called the Prices who moved from the US state of Georgia to the village of Kilanga in the Belgian Congo. I don't know whether the family in that are white or black, because in The Colour Purple they're black missionaries that go to Africa. But I really want to read the Poisonwood Bible now, because I really want to know more about kind of narratives about missionaries, that kind of thing. I find it a really interesting topic. Really, really enjoyed The Colour Purple. It was harrowing at times. It made me fill up quite a lot, but then there were moments of joy as well. There were moments when I was like, yes, Celia, you go girl, that was amazing. So I highly recommend it. After that, I needed a complete 180. I needed something completely different to reset my brain, and so I went for Robert Harris's Conclave. Told you it were different. Now, Robert Harris is the writer of one of my favourite books of all time called Fatherland. And Fatherland is set in post-Second World War, but it's like an alternative Second World War. It's like basically what the world would have looked like had Germany won the war and covered up the Holocaust. The book itself, I first came across it when I did my Holocaust literature module at university, and it was one of those books that I can't stop thinking about it over the years. I've read it a couple of times since. And so Robert Harris, he only brings out a few books every now and again, and usually when he does, they're perfect. And this one is called Conclave, and it's basically, the back of it says, the Pope is dead. Behind the locked doors of the Sistine Chapel, 118 cardinals from all over the globe will cast their votes in the world's most secretive election. They are holy men, but they have ambition, and they have rivals. Over the next 72 hours, one of them will become the most powerful spiritual figure on earth. So I read the back of that and I was like, ooh, that sounds good. I love Dan Brown books. Obviously, I've talked about the Dan Brown books that I like. I also like the movies of the Robert Langdon series. And I really liked Angels and Demons, which kind of was set in the Vatican. And set, you know, that was during a conclave as well. So I had a little bit of kind of prior knowledge of how conclaves work from the movie. Me and Tom are really interested in Vatican City and the Vatican, and so we've watched a few documentaries and stuff like that about Vatican City and the way that it operates and stuff. So I thought, oh, this book will be really good. It would be really kind of deep dive, because I knew that Robert Harris would write it authentically, and also there would be loads of really cool little details in there that I would enjoy. So it basically follows a conclave. It follows all of the cardinals coming to the Vatican and preparing for a conclave, and you learn lots of different things about the way that it works and how it operates and the secrecy that goes into it. It's not a difficult narrative. That is basically what the whole book is about. It is the process of conclave, and that's it. It's a very, very simple narrative, and I would say that 80% of it, so you get 80% of the way through, was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. The end was not. Not because of the way that it ended. So there's a big reveal at the end, which I had already predicted. I knew it was going to happen about halfway through. I was like, that's going to happen. I know that's going to happen. That's amazing. It'll be interesting to see how it all like comes out, but that is absolutely fantastic twist. And then when it did happen, that was it. It was the end of the book. I was like, oh, well, now what? You've revealed the twist, and that's great, but how is that going to impact things? How's that going to impact the world? How's it going to impact the church? How is this person gonna live their life? Like, it was very, very straight. It was almost like Robert Harris got 2/3 of the way through writing a book and then just didn't write the last third of it. I honestly think this book could have been at least half the size again, because I just wanted more. I wanted more after that fact, after the big reveal, and it wasn't. It was kind of like that final reveal that happens right at the end of the book, and then that's it, you're done. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was good. I enjoyed it, but I wanted more. I wanted the story to be longer. I wanted there to be more narrative. It had been so beautifully written for the first 2/3, and it had gone into so much detail, and then it just ended. I was like, oh, great. Like, no. I actually think that you could do this. This could be made into a TV series, and that would be a really, really interesting, you know, like if someone like HBO did it, and they did it really, really beautifully, and they made all the historical connections were proper. I think something like that could be really interesting. A TV series around conclave and the church could be really, really fascinating. And you could go into all the politics, because obviously there's church politics and there's corrupt priests in there, and it kind of goes into all of that kind of thing. And yeah, just another really, really good book, but a little bit disappointing. And that's kind of all I can say about it. Let me just check my notes and see if I wrote anything else down, because I'm kind of struggling to think of what else to say about it. Yeah. Basically the notes that I've written down, I've managed to remember them all, and I've said it all. You know, that's kind of all I can say about it, really. I would give it, I think I'd give it a 4. I think it's worth reading, because it's really like if you're interested in conclave and how Vatican City works and all that kind of thing, I think you would really enjoy it. Just don't be too disappointed when it gets to the end. But yeah, no, it was a really good one. I really enjoyed it. I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 for conclave. So we just had, I've just finished off my coffee, and we will move on to the third and final book for the month, which is The Corset by Laura Purcell. And this is absolutely amazing. Amazing, honestly. Laura Purcell, if you haven't already, go back and watch the video where we talk about the Silent Companions. I think it's like the second book in the second book review. I'll put a little iCard up here so you can go and click onto it. But I read the Silent Companions earlier this year and I enjoyed it, but I think I remember saying in that video there were a couple of bits of things that I was a bit like, not too sure. And I think that was her first book. This is her second book, and boy, can you tell that this is her second one. It's so much better. It's a masterpiece, it really is. It's beautifully written. The storyline is so unique. The thing with kind of like Gothic literature and with Gothic narratives is that the same tropes have been done over and over again. The same storyline, you know, the nanny goes to the big house and it's haunted and the kids are a bit weird, and or, you know, the new wife and the husband's keeping a secret, and you know, the housekeeper's Mardy and all that kind. It's always the same things. This is a completely new narrative. It is nothing like it's nothing like I've never. I'm getting tripping up with myself in my excitement. Calm down, Charlotte. This is like nothing I've ever read before. The narrative is completely different. Even the storyline, I've never come across a story like this before. It's imaginative. So I'll read you out the synopsis. So it's written from the perspective of two women, Dorothea and Ruth. So prison visitor and prisoner, powerful and powerless. Dorothea Truelove is young, wealthy and beautiful. Ruth Butterham is young, poor and awaiting trial for murder. When Dorothea's charitable work leads her to Oakgate Prison, she's delighted to have the chance to explore her fascination with phrenology and test her hypothesis that the shape of a person's skull can cast a light on their darkest crimes. But when she meets teenage seamstress Ruth, she is faced with another theory, that it is possible to kill with a needle and thread. For Ruth attributes her crimes to a supernatural power inherent in her stitchwork. The story Ruth has to tell of her deadly creations, of bitterness and betrayal, of death and dresses, will shake Dorothea's belief in rationality and the power of redemption. Can Ruth be trusted? Is she mad or a murderer? There you go. How cool is that? Like I read that synopsis and I was like, wow, I've never heard anything like that before. And so I actually went in with no expectations, because I knew that I'd enjoyed The Silent Companions, but the synopsis for this was so different that I thought, I don't know if I'm going to really like this or if I'm going to really not like it. And so I went in with no expectations or whatever. I read it in 2 days. I'm not kidding. Like, Tom was like playing on the Xbox and I was like, I think I might go to bed at like 8 o'clock, and I was like reading until midnight. I was getting up on a weekend at like 8 and reading it until like 11. Let me get my notes out, because all I'm going to do is sit here and go, it's amazing. And you probably want something a little bit more meaty than me just saying, it's great, go read it. So on this page I've written that there was a beautiful description of what's left after death. Yeah, so on page 98 she says, I poured the used water out in the soakaway at the back of the house, and as I watched it slop, I thought how strange it was that Naomi was dead and I was still clearing up her mess. The spirit went, but the filth lingered. The waste of things remained. I just think that's such a beautiful description about a really horrible moment. Just the way that Purcell, she crafts the sentences. It's like every single word in a sentence has been thought about in advance, and I just think that she has this beautiful turn of phrase, and it's so right. It's like, the spirit went but the filth lingered, the waste of things remained. I thought, that's so true. So she has Dorothea, the main character, has a canary, and the canary is called Wilkie, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's after like Wilkie Collins, who is, if you don't know, a very famous Gothic writer, and he's kind of like an inspiration for a lot of Gothic writers at the time, but a lot of people who write modern historical Gothic novels, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that canary's named after Wilkie Collins, and it turns out it was. Laura Purcell needed a name for a canary, and she wrote that one of her friends named the canary and said that it was a suitably Victorian fashion. That he was named Wilkie, sorry, in a suitably Victorian fashion. So I liked that, it was really sweet. So the canary's called Wilkie, and there's a description on page 388 of, so it's basically of Wilkie coming out of his cage. So it says, Wilkie hops to the open door of his cage. He perches on the edge, surveying his surroundings. This is his custom, always check before taking flight. In this, a mere bird proves himself wiser than the majority of humankind. It's like, wow, like, it's literally a canary coming out of a cage, and yet she's managed to turn it into this, like, really philosophical turn of phrase of, you know, always check before taking flight. Oh, it's just beautiful. The language is amazing. So there was that. There were those couple of examples of where I really thought the language excelled, and it really made me go, oh, lovely. So there were a couple of things that I found really interesting. So they were actually like little historical nuggets that had been put in the book. I'm assuming that Purcell either knew them already or had done some historical research. And there were little tiny details that just really made the setting very valid and feel very historically accurate. So there was one description on page 140 where Dorothea's getting ready for a ball, and she talks about her maid having saved all the rats from the hairbrush to make into a false hairpiece. And I was like, no, they didn't do that, did they? And so I looked into it, and it was like, they did. So when you're brushing your hair, and you know you get your brush and it's always full of like broken hair, and you pull it off and, you know, throw it away or give it to the birds or do whatever you do with it. In Victorian times, they would collect all of that hair together, and then maids and things would make them into a hairpiece. How amazing is that? So I'm sure you can tell what's happened, inevitably. We're on the phone, but I've not got too much longer to talk now, so I hope you can excuse it once again. Like I say, come January, new camera, new videos, better content all round, and I can stop complaining about it, because my sister tells me that it's very annoying having to hear me talk about my camera all the time on my videos. So sorry, Melissa, for mentioning it again. But now I can't actually get to my notes, which are in my phone, so we're going to have to wing it a bit. But we were talking about the rats from the hairbrush making the hair pieces. I was like, that's amazing. That's such a good, like, bit of historical detail that Purcell, she didn't have to include it there, but because she did, it just made the world feel so much more real, and I love learning little historical facts like that, so I found that a really interesting kind of piece of information. I just thought the whole storyline from beginning to end was really interesting. I want to know more about phrenology, which is the study of the cranium and the shapes of your head, and how that can determine like your behaviour and your predisposition to crime in this instance. Obviously I don't know now actually if phrenology is something that people still look at. I think off the top of my head, I think, and I might have to cut this out if I've like completely made an absolute tit of myself and it's not true, I think that phrenology is one of those things that like the Victorians believed, and so they studied, but actually it's just part of your bones, you know. Some people have got longer arms than other people because they're just the bones they're born with. I don't think it's, you know, it's been disproven as an actual science that people have different shaped heads because this part of their emotional side is more developed, or this crime area back here is prominent, so therefore you are predisposed. Don't think any of that is a science, but I'm interested in the fact that the Victorians thought that and the Victorians studied it. So I'm interested in learning more about that. So I'm definitely going to look into that a little bit more. So yeah, that was that. I really enjoyed the ending. I thought the ending was really good. And in classic Purcell style, she left it until the final line for a twist. And it wasn't a twist that makes you go, oh, bloody hell, come on, I want more. Like, what happens next? It wasn't one of those. It was just a beautiful final line that went, oh yeah, that's exactly what needed to happen. Yeah, that's brilliant. So again, I'm not going to tell you what that is because you're going to go read it and you're going to enjoy it. But she does that. She always leaves you hanging and you're always like, how is this going to resolve itself? How is it, like, there's literally a page left. How is this going to resolve? And then you read it and you're like, yes, that's exactly how it needed to finish. So yeah, I'm going to give this a solid 5 out of 5. Again, not a single thing I would have made better. I'm really happy to have found Purcell's books. She's just a writer that I just think is amazing, and I think her 4th book comes out in like January, February. The 3rd one is called The Bone something. I don't know. I've got it on my shelf over there. I'm gonna read that as part of my readathon. And then the 4th one comes out in January. So yeah, I've got 2 more of her books to read coming up. So that's it for today. Thanks for being so patient with me over Vlogmas and not being able to get any videos up last week. It was a crazy final week of work, guys. Hope you're all having a lovely day wherever you are, and merry 3 days to Christmas, I think. I can't remember. I'm already losing track of the days. I've only been off work 2 days. But yeah, the world's a crazy place. It doesn't seem to be getting any better any sooner. So if you are finding that things have all gone a bit awry in the last week with family Christmas and all that kind of stuff, as it has with us in the UK, I don't know how everybody's getting on around the world, but certainly in the UK things have gone completely tits up this last week. So I really hope you're all doing okay. If you're struggling and you want someone to talk to, do come and message me. On Instagram is usually the best place to find me. I am at Charlotte Furness Writer. I respond to all my Instagram messages unless they're like weird, creepy messages or promotions or things like that. Always happy to talk. Do reach out if you need to. And yeah, I'll see you again in a couple of days' time. All right, guys, take care. Bye.